Live, where news comes first. This is ABC-7 Extra.
It is Sunday, June 5th. Welcome to ABC-7 Extra. Good evening. I'm Stephanie Guadian. For the next half hour, we are going to talk about the ongoing TxDOT projects taking place right now on El Paso's west side. They aim to streamline traffic, but overlapping timelines and project scopes are creating some hassles for drivers. Both the Border Expressway West, an extension of Loop 375, and the I-10 Collector Distributor Lane project are changing how we travel in the Sun City. Joining us tonight are El Paso District Engineer Bob Bielek and Director of Transportation Planning and Development Eddie Valtier. Remember, you can email us your comments and your questions now to ABC7Extra at KVIA.com. You can also reach us at 915-496-1775. On Twitter, you can use the hashtag ABC7Extra. We want to hear from you tonight. This is your chance. Now, as we speak, researchers at the Texas A&M Transportation Institute, they're looking into easing traffic flow in El Paso and other large cities in the state.
Well, it's been a little hectic, but you got to be patient. It's still flowing.
Sergio Trejo travels I-10 through West El Paso about twice a week. He and other drivers are all too familiar with the construction happening on the interstate. But it's work TxDOT says needs to happen. Back in 2014, some 60,000 vehicles traveled eastbound through I-10 at Wrestler in 24 hours. Approximately 66,000 moved westbound. Jeff Shelton is a program manager for the Texas A&M Transportation Institute in El Paso. He is watching the construction along I-10 closely.
TxDOT's reducing, I believe, a lane on each direction right now, and that's just for safety reasons. They're not going to compromise mobility for safety. Safety is always number one.
It's horrible. You can't get through it. I mean, you'd be stuck in it for over an hour. You're not going anywhere, and it's taking like so long for them to get it done. It's making it a hassle, and then they're closing off different areas to where you can't even get around on the west side at all.
Shelton is looking at ways to ease El Paso's traffic. Options include off-peak freight deliveries, advanced traveler information, and dedicated truck lanes. The last, though, is not an easy task.
You know, TxDOT, if they want to build another lane just for trucks, they probably have to acquire more right of way to build another lane, and that's a huge investment for I-10. I mean, and then on the east side, there's nothing you can steal. You can't make it any wider. There's no room.
And joining us now, El Paso District Engineer Bob Bielek and Director of Transportation Planning and Development Eddie Valtier. Thank you both for being with us, staying up late tonight. All right, so we just want to jump right in and talk about the two projects, the big projects happening right now. Let's start with the Border Expressway West. That's an extension of Loop 375. Where are we with that project?
Well, that project started in April last year. It's roughly a $600 million project. And it takes us from Racetrack to just about a mile east of Park Street. And what that will do is that will complete the loop around El Paso. Now, portions of that are going to be tolled. From Santa Fe to Racetrack will be tolled. Beyond Racetrack, that's existing pavement, it will be upgraded, but it won't be tolled in that segment. The big thing about the Border West Expressway is that it links directly to the Go 10 project, or the I-10 CD Lane project. Right in the area of Sunland Park, Paisano connects to I-10. Border West Expressway will also connect to I-10 at that point. So that's the issue that we have with those two projects, and the reason that we have to build those two projects together. Next Sunday we start shutting down Paisano. And the reason we're doing that is so that we can construct the new bridges that are part of the Go 10 project. We can construct a number of bridges and move about 1 million yards of earth that are part of the Border West project. But at the end of that 8 months, 6 months to 8 months, what we're going to have is a new connection, a direct connection from Doniphan to Paisano. We'll have the McNutt to Paisano connection opened up. So people will have another alternative when we start to tear down bridges on I-10.
Okay, so one of the first questions that I hear from people are, why are we doing this all at once? Why not just complete one project and then move on to the next?
Well, because of the temporary connections we would have to build between the two projects, we would disrupt traffic for 7 to 8 years instead of 4 years. And that's ultimately the reason that we do it at one time. I mean, we got the money, and that was important to get the money to be able to do it. But because we have to change all of those connections, because the connections on the Go 10 project are with the CD lanes instead of the main lanes as they are today, it really is difficult to construct temporary facilities that will really work.
Okay, the other project is the I-10 collector distributor lane project. I think a lot of people are familiar with that one because they're experiencing some delays. Bring us up to date on that.
Well, that project is closing part of the gap we have here in El Paso. I-10 in El Paso, from Mesa Street to Copia, is the only metropolitan section of interstate in the state of Texas that doesn't have frontage roads, which means that if we're doing maintenance or if we have an incident on the main lanes, we have no place to take people. So this is closing part of that gap, roughly half of that gap. This project will add another lane on I-10 in each direction, and it'll build 2 lanes on the outside of I-10 in each direction. They will be limited access facilities in and of themselves. And all of the connections with the local road system will be on the collector distributor lanes instead of the main lanes. And because the 2 will have roughly the same speed limit, it'll make merging between the collector distributor lanes and the main lanes much easier.
Okay, but in the meantime, some little bit of confusion and some hassle for some drivers. Now, last month, a deadly crash on I-10 near Sunderland Park killed 2 people, sent 6 others to hospitals. This is video from that scene. You can see those flames shooting from the cab of a semi. 2 other vehicles ended up on their tops. Traffic along this stretch of the interstate was backed up for about 19 hours. Some people wondered after this happened if perhaps the TxDOT construction happening in this area could have possibly contributed to that crash.
Well, right now, based on what we know, it doesn't. That area where the crash occurred is one of the few areas where we don't have barrier on the outside where there was an active construction going on. But it was 2 miles inside of the construction zone, which starts at Mesa. So again, we're waiting for the police report because TxDOT investigates every fatality that occurs in the district, and we take a look at whether or not a design issue or whether it was a traffic control issue could have contributed to the accident, and if so, then we change our processes.
Okay, so I know that I spoke the day after that crash. I spoke to one semi-truck driver who was from Phoenix, and she told me that she did not see any signage as she was coming into town, didn't know about the construction until she was pretty much into the delay. Do we have that type of signage outside of town warning people coming into the city about what's happening?
Well, not so much right now because we're not doing any work on the main lanes themselves. Now we're going to be starting that so that you'll start to see those signs appear. But so long as we were keeping all the lanes in active use and we weren't reducing the speed limit through that area, there aren't additional signs. Now they will be showing up as we start to reduce the speed limit in those times when we're reducing the number of lanes that are available.
Okay. Advice for drivers you might have over the next couple of years?
Well, I would say you need to really plan ahead and try leaving a little earlier for work, stagger the hours, spreading out the traffic in the morning and in the evenings will help everyone get around a little bit easier. I also think that finding the alternate routes, we don't have many, as Bob stated. We will be working on Paisanos to give an additional alternative route, but really just find those alternative routes and leave a little bit earlier.
And what has the aftermath been of people taking these alternate routes?
I drive Trans Mountain every day, and even with the westbound Trans Mountain only having 1 lane, it's actually been very simple to go both directions on Trans Mountain. I've taken Mesa a few times, particularly early in the morning when I have to travel downtown, and I've been able to make it from where Shadow Mountain runs into Mesa to downtown in less than 10 minutes. So those avenues are available. You just don't want to drive them between 8 and 9. Try to get out if you can before 7 or after 9 o'clock. It usually is a lot easier.
Okay, so what's happening next for folks on the west side? What can we expect?
So in future projects, we are going to have a Mesa Park interchange, which is at the end of the GO10 project on the southern end. And so what that project will do is make some operational improvements right there at the intersection of Executive. As you head north, there will be a frontage road for access to some development that's there. It will also give you an alternative to Executive to get to I-10. So that's the next thing for the west side.
Okay, and a lot of people have asked about Executive. What is happening there? It seems like it's taking a long time.
Well, a number of things are happening at Executive. For one thing, the Border West Expressway will be going underneath Executive just to the west of I-10. So right now there's a runaround that is in place there as they construct the bridges that will span the future Border West Expressway. On the east side, a lot of the work there is prepping up for the future Mesa Park interchange. That ramp from I-10 or from Executive to I-10 westbound will never go back into operation in its current location. Instead, it will come in as part of the new Mesa Park interchange.
All right, so we want to remind people that we have at ABC-7, we have a StormTrack Weather app that includes a traffic section. And to help you get through traffic in El Paso, Las Cruces, and all the borderland, once you download the app for free at the Apple and the Android stores, you'll see the traffic feature at the bottom of the welcome screen. Click it to get driving conditions and information on highway incidents that may slow you down. You're watching ABC-7 Extra. When we come back, we're going to talk more about that 8-month closure starting next week involving one of the busiest streets in El Paso. If you would like to share your comments or have questions for one of our guests, you can call our comment line at 915-496-1775. And if you're online right now, you can email us at ABC7Extra@KVIA.com. You can also tweet me at Guadian ABC7. Use the hashtag ABC7 Extra. You're watching ABC7 Extra, where news comes first. We're back with El Paso District Engineer Bob Bielek and Director of Transportation Planning and Development Eddie Valtier. Thank you guys for being with us tonight. Before we get back to our conversation, though, we've got a traffic alert that you need to know about starting next week. Starting Sunday, June 12th, Paisano will be completely shut down from Sunland Park Drive to Executive Center for the next 8 months. This closure is so crews can finish the road construction necessary for the Border West Expressway. The only way to get around this will be to use Mesa or Constitution Drive, and detour signs are going to be in place. Again, that complete closure is going to be lasting for 8 months. We actually have a call right now that we want to go to. This is Mike on the west side. Mike?
This question is for Bob. I travel on I-10 East, and they have closed the lane over there, and I'm curious about what you're doing for the safety for the passengers, like on a motorcycle. They have open ruts that are in the shoulder over there that they have pushed that lane to in the speed lane, and it's causing various hazards for motorcyclists because the open ditches where the electrical is has caused a problem for tires getting stuck in those ruts. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that's the first I've heard of that particular problem, but we'll get our crews out to take a look, and any open ruts will close before we move the traffic over.
Okay, so safety for drivers, obviously a concern, but also safety for your workers, a big concern. We recently reported extensively on the trial of Jan Michael Nieves. He was a former Fort Bliss soldier who was accused of driving drunk, crashing into a construction site, and killing 2 workers back in 2014. He ended up being found guilty of manslaughter and being sentenced to probation. Talk to us about the types of precautions, the safety measures that TxDOT is taking right now for those workers out, working every day on these construction projects.
Well, it's particularly difficult when we completely close I-10. And that incident occurred the first time that we started to tear down the Yandell Bridge. And we had barricades at every opportunity. We had police out, but he still somehow got through it. So when we did it the second time and actually demolished the bridge, we actually put arresting systems out in the roadways. They're similar to the arresting systems that are used on aircraft carriers to catch aircraft that are landing. And we'll be doing that as we move into some of the closures when we start to demolish some of the bridges in Sutherland Park, the Bridge to Nowhere, the direct connects for Sunderland Park and Wrestler, when those are torn down, which will be over a weekend or a long-term closure, we'll probably use the same arresting system to try to protect everyone there.
And you've started a new campaign trying to remind people that these workers out there, you know, that they're human, that they have families, and just try to encourage drivers to slow down when they are around construction zones.
Well, absolutely, and that's it actually is an old program because last year we had almost 22,000 accidents in work zones, 136 people killed in work zones. And almost 90% of the people killed in work zones are drivers. They're not construction workers. But we're trying to do what we can to protect construction workers and drivers. And drivers can help us up by doing two things. One is slowing down, and the second thing is just paying attention to what's going on. Don't be distracted, don't be on your phone, don't be texting.
One of the questions I hear a lot of people ask is, why can't we have dedicated lanes for drivers, semi-truck drivers? Is that a possibility?
Well, the difficulty with that here in El Paso is the lack of room. For example, between UTEP and the border, we have 1,200 feet. And in that 1,200 feet, we have two mainline railroads. We have US 85 or Paisano. We have I-10, and we're building a new expressway through that same area. And if you try to dedicate pavement to a specific use, what you're going to find is that pavement isn't going to be used very heavily. While there are a lot of trucks, there aren't enough to solidly use a lane of pavement. And we have too much traffic here to give pavement away. We have to use it all.
Question, is El Paso really playing catch-up with the population growth when it comes to traffic?
Oh, absolutely. We're way behind the power curve in trying to not only build enough capacity through town, but have a loop around town so that we have an alternative for when we have to do something with I-10. And the other thing that we have to remember is I-10 is about 60 years old. It's 10 years beyond its useful life. So there's a lot that needs to be done with I-10, but we can't do any of it until we get the loop in place.
Okay, we're going to take a call now from David out on the west side. David.
Okay, I'm very critical of what's going on. They're doing too much at the same time. They're closing off all the shoulders. Drivers have nowhere to go. If they have to do evasive action, they're either hitting the wall or hitting each other. And then they don't clear these accidents away. It's causing more accidents. They need to clear stuff away quicker. Get rid of all the cones all over town. And quit doing so much at the same time. You're killing us.
Okay, so I think he had a couple of comments in there.
Sure.
Let's go ahead and start. It is a tight squeeze for drivers.
Sure.
Let's talk about that.
Well, anytime that you try to build new facilities right on top of old facilities because we don't have the room or the ability to go out and build a greenfield roadway for people, we have to expand existing roadways. And that means that we have to put barricades up to protect both drivers and workers as that goes on. We've got to narrow lanes so that we can keep the lanes open. And drivers have to do their part of it. And I understand the frustration. I live on the west side. Eddie lives on the west side. So we know what that frustration is. But the reality is, it really isn't that bad. I've lived in Miami. I've lived in Atlanta. I've lived in Denver. And the traffic that we have here is not all that bad, even under these circumstances. Now, there are times when we have to close I-10 entirely when it gets very bad. And that we have to deal with, and that we'll try to give the public as much notice on as we possibly can and give them the opportunity to take alternative routes wherever it's possible.
He had another comment talking about why does it take so long to clean up a traffic accident, a crash?
It depends on what that crash is, and we're working with the El Paso Police Department and the Sheriff's Office to try to find ways to move traffic or move crashes out of traffic a lot more quickly. But when you have an accident like we had on I-10 where there's a fatality involved, the level of study that the police have to go through is akin to a homicide investigation. Chief Fallon could explain it a lot better than I can, but there's certain measurements that they have to take and they can't do some of it at night. They have to do it during the daytime. So those just drag on. It always seems like it's forever, but they're doing their job, and we're working with them to try to find ways to move non-fatal accidents out of the way a lot faster than we have been.
That would certainly help. We also have another call. Joe from the Westside.
I think we're blessed with this project, and I want to thank the state of Texas sending this money to El Paso. Most important question, I'd like to see how the El Paso Police Department is working in conjunction when we have the traffic jams. How are they helping with the intersections?
Well, they are helping with the intersections. Both of our contractors on these big jobs, when we have closures, typically they'll pay for overtime police to be out and help manage some of these intersections. Particularly when we start to shut down I-10, when we're doing the bridge demolitions where we just can't keep it open any longer. We'll have a lot of police out there, and they've been very, very good at working with us with their limited resources, and their guys working overtime, because very often those folks will be putting in a 16 or 20-hour day when they get involved in one of our late night shutdowns.
So I wanted to add that you know, we do look at a do-nothing alternative, and we look at traffic projections, and El Paso is just growing, and if you don't do anything, then you're put in a situation in 5 to 10 years from now, even more traffic, building around more traffic. So these projects are going to give us those alternate routes when we do have an incident. In the future, police department will be able to direct them onto these facilities so that we don't have what we have today. So I think that's also a good point to bring up.
Bottom line, this construction is going to go on for years, so drivers need to accept it and learn how to drive with it.
Well, Westsiders will see a very big improvement in 2019 as we finish both these projects.
Okay. So there is an end date.
Well, for the Westsiders.
Okay.
But then we've got to go back and fix I-10. So that's going to be almost a nightmarish situation. If you think about I-10 as it goes through downtown El Paso in a depressed section, and what we have to do to fix that. So it's going to get better on the west side. Westsiders will be able to use the collector distributor lanes and never get onto I-10, and they'll be able to go back and forth very easily. But we will have issues, and the reality is that once we have Border West Expressway in place, we have that loop in place, there will be a way for people to get around what we have to do downtown.
All right, you are watching ABC-7 Extra. Still ahead, we'll take your comments and your questions on tonight's topic. You can call 915-496-1775. We want to hear from you tonight. Don't forget, you can also reach us online at ABC7Extra at KVIA.com. Welcome back to ABC-7 Extra. We want to get to a couple of the tweets that have come in. We've got one from Julian Bonilla Jr. He asked the question, why do we not have workers 24/7? It could create more jobs at the same time for graveyard shifts. Guys?
Well, part of the reason is that we do have people out there 24/7 at times. But some of the work that we do, particularly as you get into some of the bridge work, is very, very difficult to do at night. Tying steel. There's a thing called stacking trades as you're trying to progress a job. And to the extent that contractors can do that, they already are doing it. But there's just having people out there 24/7 doesn't necessarily mean you'll accomplish any more.
And I would think it would be more dangerous at night.
Well, it is more dangerous at night. There's no question about that.
All right, we've got another call. Albert from the Northeast. Albert.
Yes, my question is about the on and off ramps being too close to each other, and it's causing a lot of jam in the traffic. What can we go ahead and do on that?
Okay, I'm not sure which on and off ramp you're talking about. On the west side, the one that sticks out is from the Wrestler Direct Connect to the exit ramp to Sunland Park. That one backs up terribly now. And both of those will take place from the Collector Distributor Road in the future, and it should completely cure that problem. On the northeast, since he's from the northeast, a project we're going to do next year is to widen 54 from Hondo Pass to Trans Mountain, and we're going to be switching those ramps from standard diamond ramps to X ramps. And what that means is it just moves all of the merging operations onto the frontage roads instead of onto the main lanes. And it doesn't allow traffic then to back up into the main lanes when you go to the X ramp configuration.
Okay, we don't want to leave folks out who live on the east side. What's coming up for them?
Well, so currently we have a project on Loop 375 from Bob Hope to Montana, and we're adding a lane there, and we're also doing some ramp improvements as well. In the next couple of months, we'll be what we call letting a project to add a lane to Interstate 10 from East Lake to Loop 375, so you'll have some added capacity there. Then one very important project that Bob alluded to is more in the central part of town, but it will assist East Side residents in getting to Central and to the West Side, and that is our I-10 Connect project, which is going to be a project which will provide a new connector ramp from Interstate 10 to Loop 375, the Cesar Chavez Highway, border highway. And right now, currently, we don't have that. You have to, if you want to get from I-10 to Loop 375 in that area, you need to go through some local roads through Paisano, get stuck for a couple of hours with some truck traffic that's there. And this project will actually make a direct connection from both east to east and west to west from Loop 375. So then we can go in and start some really needed work on Interstate 10, and we'll have a route around that construction.
Okay, so East Siders have their own traffic challenges.
We're working for all.
Right, and they're going to have a lot of input on that because we've just started a corridor study on I-10, and that corridor study runs from the New Mexico state line to Tornillo. And we're going to be taking a look at everything that we need to do along Interstate 10, and we're going to be inviting the public to get involved and tell us what their problems are, and we'll solve as many of those as we can as we move through that process.
Okay, we're going to take another call. Lily from the West Side.
I want to know why they didn't complete finish the access roads before they closed off more parts of the freeway.
Why didn't we finish, I think, the access road before we closed off more parts of the freeway?
Okay, right now we don't have any of the freeway closed, so that's why I'm not following the question. We're building as much of the collector distributor lanes, which are on the outside, as we can before we get in to add an additional lane on I-10 itself. So that is happening, it just isn't very obvious.
What's a date when we can start to feel some relief on the West Side?
Well, I think probably at the end of 2017, early 2018, we'll have the collector distributor lanes themselves reasonably well built, and probably portions of those in operation, so that we'll be able to give people a little freer movement on the outside. What the public is seeing on the screen right now is what it's going to look like when it's finished as you move along the West Side. And as I say, if you're going from Mesa to Sunland Park, you never have to get on I-10. You'll be able to do that all on the collector distributor lane. So we heard about the backups. We're approaching the Wrestler Direct Connect right now, which is a real problem. That ties into the main lanes today. In the future, as you see on the screen, it will tie into the collector distributor roads, and it'll make it a much easier commute than if you're going to Sunland Park, or if you want to get on I-10, then you'll be able to slide on I-10 at the next opportunity. All
right, so we're all going to have to be patient. Thank you both for joining me tonight. A lot of great information. I really appreciate it. Before we go, we want to remind you ABC-7 has a StormTrack Weather app that includes a traffic section to help you get through traffic in El Paso, Las Cruces, and all of the borderland. Once you download the app for free at the Apple and Android stores, you'll see the traffic feature at the bottom of the welcome screen. Click it to get driving conditions and information on any highway incidents that may slow you down. That is it for us. Thank you for joining us. I'm Stephanie Guadian, and this has been ABC-7 Extra.